This is episode number 5 of the historic clothing series, and today we're going to be looking at the Farthingale, and we're going to be looking at specifically the early form of a Farthingale, which was the Spanish Guarda Infada from the kind of late 15th, early 16th century. It's going to be interesting doing this in clo. I have a few different techniques for doing this, and just in the sense of what you need, but we're going to try to replicate the type of movement a Guarda Infada would have. I think that's very important. So at the end of this, we're just gonna animate it as well, just to see if it moves the way we want to. But it's gonna be interesting doing it in CLO3D just because it's got so many solid elements within it. So we're gonna be looking at a few different techniques that you can do just using clo to get some of those more structural hard elements within it. So basically the farthingale we're going to be looking at is this one here. This is a very old example. From what I've been seeing, is the only surviving example of a guarda infada, and basically what we're looking at is a big kind of linen skirt. These could have been silk as well, and around it we have all of these rings that are made from different very hard materials. So most often we see them made out of baleen, which is like the whale teeth, otherwise known as like whale boning. You could also have them made of straw or different type of natural materials that were tied together and made into a sort of rope that you would then place around these structures. Just to give it even more structure, the material would be treated with almost like a starch type of thing that would give it even more structure itself. So when we look at it, this one here is open on the back, but from what I understand, this was cut and they're not open at the back, or some of them were, but like the one we're going to be doing is going to go all the way around. And here you can see a cut on number 30.19. You can see a cut here of what the cross section would look like of the hem. And these are just a whole lot of ropes of bents, they're called, with all of these straws that you can see. They're kind of tied together just to form that structure. And because these aren't fully hard materials, they do have a little bit of movement, so they do bend a little bit. But sometimes you would have these made out of things like iron and steel, especially like later on, which of course would just be a solid structure. But we're going to be looking at something like this. Here you can see in this illustration a kind of depiction of how this would look sitting down. So you can see that there is quite a lot of movement that can happen inside of these, like with these farthingales on, as opposed to like what we later see in the crinolines, which are just these massive structure that doesn't move. But it really depended on the type of farthingale you looked at. You can see here some of the early depictions of the Spanish Guarda Infada as well. It's got this very structured cone-like appearance. That's the most important thing that we're going to try to capture today. And from reading about it, it definitely had a distinct type of movement to it, and I think it's really important that we try to, at least from what I've read, try to replicate that type of movement, so we can really see what they were kind of working with. So these are scans from the book Patterns of Fashion, the 5th volume, which is all about different types of bodies, stays, and farthingales. I can't recommend the book enough. If you haven't checked out the whole series of the Patterns of Fashion books, they're really incredible for this type of stuff. Here we can see a more detailed kind of pattern of what this looked like, and it's really a simple kind of A-line skirt, very long. These would go all the way. We see here these would go kind of all the way down, and it would have these ropes of bends kind of all the way around. So there's nothing really crazy to it. We're gonna try to replicate the construction as much as possible. I'm gonna be making 3 versions of this, or 2 versions of this. I think one of them is going to be just a run-of-the-mill kind of way of just getting the shape correct so we can get that cone shape. Just because these were undergarments, in these early kind of photos, in these early depictions, we can see that I guess these Spanish women early on like to show off the farthingales, which is a cool thing to see. I guess it makes sense. If it's a new fashion, I guess you always want to show it off, especially if it's something that's quite controversial, which these were definitely incredibly controversial in the societies. They were in like European societies. So you could either have them like this where they were shown off, or you can see in these depictions up here, there's still a farthingale under there. That's the way you're getting this cone-like shape to the silhouette. Is just not shown. And I found these other illustrations from an online French museum, which kind of showed some silhouettes of like 16th century fashion. These here are Italian and these are French, and you can see the same cone-like thing happening underneath these, which would come from a farthingale. And underneath you can see some of these structures that kind of depict what I believe to be a farthingale, just because you see these cross ropes of bents here. I think that's what they're depicting. Even when we look at the Italian ones, I think there was a really good example here. You see the structure kind of a farthingale underneath, even on this one here. So, and here as well, I think this is what's her name? I think this is Eleonora of Toledo, if I'm not mistaken. It might be somebody else in Spain, but you can see here another early depiction of the farthingale. This one is on the outside of a gown, which is interesting. Even the ones back here. But yeah, we're gonna try to depict this. So the first version, I'm gonna make just the shape, so you can have a shape to use and then to work on top of it, so that everything you work, like the gowns you work on top of, the bottom shape fall the way they're supposed to and you get the right silhouette. And then we're also gonna do one that's like a little bit more detailed and gets the movement. And also an important part about this, because you can see here the structure of it, the ropes of bents that were on the outside of the farthingale, as soon as you put fabric on them, the fabric will still, I think, I haven't seen it shown in any illustrations, but I believe that you would still see the structure of these specific ropes of bents coming through the fabric. So we're gonna make one that kind of shows the structure as well, so that you can get that kind of coming through on the outside. And the final one we're gonna do, we're also going to add just a little bit more detail to it, so it looks more akin to this, where you have the ropes of bents and then they're covered with another piece of fabric that looks just a little bit stretched and a little bit kind of like here, you know, just so we make it look as realistic as possible. But yeah, this is what we're working on today. So we're starting very, very simple with just making an A-line skirt, and this is nothing that is too difficult. We're pretty much gonna use this base for all three versions that we're gonna do. So we have to make sure that it's against the silhouette that we need. And notice that I'm not making an actual waistband for it. I'm just elasticating the kind of the waistline there. This is because this isn't supposed to be super realistic. It's more so supposed to get the silhouette right. So we're just making it as simple as possible, and then strengthening it so it starts getting some of that shape going outwards. Now, if we go back to our example, you can see this one here has more than one rope of bents across the hem. This one has a whole lot across the hem, and this one here has only one, as well as some of these ones here that only have one. For just simplicity's sake, we're only gonna do one. We can do like one of these with a lot of them on there, but it's just gonna add to the complexity, and it's just gonna make CLO run a little bit slower than it should. So yeah, at this point we just have to make the internal lines that are going to be pretty much the channels on which our ropes of bents are going to go onto. And here I'm just going to start placing with kind of like pinning. I'm going to start placing the extremities of the skirt where I want them, just so we can start getting the silhouette, just the silhouette to communicate more what it's going to look like in the end. When we're gonna add the ropes of bents, just to make sure that we have enough volume and that there's no horrible mistakes. Like at this point, what you want to fix is how low the skirt goes everywhere, and how wide it is. Because you, from this point on, you don't want to touch the silhouette of the skirt. And yeah, we're just adding the internal lines here, and the easiest way I found is just to use the offset internal line feature and to go one at a time. And then just because the curve at the bottom differs so much than what the curve at the top is, you're going to have to manually shape each and every one of those, so you get a nice and gradual kind of curve going all the way up. Because the way the internal line kind of gets copied through from the bottom to the top, the curve at the top is going to be way too acute. So yeah, there's nothing really crazy about this part. You just want to make sure you have enough ropes of bends there, and this is highly dependent on the design you're trying to emulate, but this is pretty much what my reference looked like, other than the bottom. Like I said, I'm not going to be doing the design with all of the ropes of bends at the bottom, because I think CLO3D is gonna be very tough for CLO3D to do it. So and the other thing I'm doing here is just lining up the sides and making sure that they match. And we also kind of want to make sure that the line is straight going across the side. As you saw there on my 2D viewer, the line was straight going from side to side, but on my 3D viewer it wasn't straight. So I just left it as it was, and it ended up being okay. And now we're basically just going to copy each of the sides, and we're going to be cutting out all of the channels that we made on the copies. And at this point, there's not too much to it. You just want to delete all the parts you're not using, and then we're going to be wanting to sew on pretty much every single one of those. We're going to want to sew it onto its respective part on the front or on the bottom. And then after we're done sewing them, we're going to duplicate all the front bends and all the rear bends as well. And this way we don't have to do the sewing twice. So using the Control D feature, which is the cloning feature, this lets you kind of keep all the characteristics of each side you're cloning. So, well, not cloning, my bad. It's copying with symmetry. But yeah, so there you go. Now we have the bends on, and they're starting to hold the shape a little bit. It's not as strong as I would like it to be. So we're gonna fix that a little bit later, but now we're just going to make sure that we match these up and we merge them. And we do this so that we have a continuous strip all around, because we want to simulate kind of the ropes of bends from real life, which were just one very long strip of bends. So yeah, this part is pretty much just a whole lot of clicking. I'm not gonna lie, there's not too much to it. Now this is not going to be enough for everything we're going to want to do, because these right now still only simulate fabric. They don't simulate the hardness of a rope of bend that a rope of bend would have. So we're going to fix that a little bit later, but right now we just want to make sure we have the foundation correct. Yeah, so at this point, if you're just looking to work off something on top of something that has the A-line silhouette, at this point we're pretty much done. So we have the shape we wanted, and then we can just take this, we can freeze it, and just because they're frozen, I think CLO still uses much more resources to calculate the logic of these if you were to just work on top of them. So what I like to do, or at least it feels like it to me, I'm not sure if it does, but it definitely feels like it to me. What I like to do is just take these, I like to export them as an OBJ. We're gonna weld it, export it as a thick object, and anything else, everything looks good. So then let's say I just deleted it. Then let's say we want to import it again to work on top of it. We're not gonna use the import because then it's gonna take away our model, but we're gonna import add. We're gonna do OBJ, and then we're gonna select our OBJ. I'm just selecting it off screen here. And then this will come up. We want to add, we want to put it in as an avatar, and we're not going to change its position. And then it's just going to come back in like this. So now basically you have this to work on top of. And if we just bring this back in, and now you can see that you can just have this kind of on top. Let's say you're working on a big skirt or whatever, or a big gown. You would just have this on top and it would very, very nicely kind of keep the silhouette underneath. And this is like the simplest way to do it. Oh yeah, sometimes it does this where it comes through weird. I'm not sure exactly why, but if we just go into its settings here, I'm just gonna keep this so the skin offset is kind of the offset between the fabric and the OBJ you're working on, your avatar. So I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna put it up a little bit more, and then we're just going to try to take this one more time and see if that fixes it. That should be good here. But yeah, like I was saying, if you wanna have like something more that I think would look more accurate, then we would basically just go back to the spot where we left off. Now, just to take it one step further, we can give this like this fabric for the inner bends here. We can go and give it a thickness of something like 10 millimeters. This will give it like an actual really big thickness when it sits on top of everything. And when you do this, you're gonna wanna take the ends of these and whoops. Oh, never mind. So just the way in which we worked, the ends of these are already sewn to each other. If they're not, if you kind of missed a step somewhere with the sewing, make sure the ends of the bends are sewn to each other, because if they're not, then they kind of push everything out in that area. But yeah, you can kind of have this, and if you take this, you could use this as an OBJ, you know, freeze it and do the same thing we did earlier. Oh yeah, so basically why I like this a lot more is because you can kind of already see it, how you can see the geometry of the bents of rows from underneath. And I'm assuming that this is what it would have looked like. Like for example, if you're moving around, depending on how thick the fabric is, but when you're moving around, I would assume that you could kind of see like the skeleton underneath of those bents of rows, which I think is a really nice detail. But yeah, honestly, if I was gonna work with a farthingale, I would definitely choose this method because I think it's much nicer when you get that underneath. Now, one of the problems I have with working this way, where you don't leave the underlying skirt as an OBJ, is that there's like a lot of friction between the fabrics. So you can see like I'm trying to pull this out, but it's like it's almost like it's stuck. It's almost like there's so much like static friction on the between the layers, which I'm not sure why or how you would solve this. Feels like it's almost like a vacuum cleaner under there that's kind of sucking the fabric in, which is kind of annoying. And just to kind of show the difference, and what you can do here is turn the actual static friction down. I'll turn it to like 0.1, and we can bring this back in and activate. And when I move this around, you can see that like I can move this so much better than before. And after I move it, the most important part is that it feels like it sits on top. It doesn't, like, you can see on this side where I moved it a lot, it doesn't get sucked in as much. That's why I prefer to use it as an OBJ. And honestly, that should do it. And then you got a nice farthingale that you can work on top of, and it's got nice a nice structure underneath, which is fine. You can choose this one, you can choose the one with no structure. They both work pretty well. I prefer this one personally. The reason why I like this one more is because if you want to animate, I think this one works a lot better for animation. And it's the best one out of all three options, just because you can keep these at like 8 particle distance, which is much better for animation. And you're also only working with 2 layers. In our next example, we're going to be working with 3 layers. And to get the next example looking good, you're going to need to do it at 5 particle distance. So in my opinion, this is the best one for animation. But yeah, the last one I'm going to show you is just adding another detail on top of this, which I personally think is quite nice. So you can kind of see here, it looks pretty fake, you know, like it doesn't look super realistic, I think, with just these on like this. It's not the worst looking thing, but like I showed earlier, the way these were made was with fabric wrapped around the bends, and you want to kind of recreate that a little bit. So this part isn't very difficult conceptually, or like the technique we use is just kind of difficult to get CLO to kind of comply with what is going on. The first thing you're going to do is create internal lines that are offset on the outside of every internal line we've had so far by about 1/2 centimeter. This is because, as you can see in the 3D viewport, the thickness that we've added to the ropes of bends makes it so that they are outside of the internal lines that we originally had. And now we want to bring in another piece of fabric that will overlap them. And when we do that, if we want to sew it on the original internal lines, it's going to create a lot of problems for CLO to deal with. And it's going to make our job a lot more difficult. So we just want to make sure we put it as far away as needed, so that in the 3D viewport you can see the internal lines we've created. And on the 3D viewport now, you can kind of see them already. And the next thing you want to do is, just like we did with the creating the ropes of bends, you want to duplicate the front and back panels, and then cut out all of the internal lines that you need, and then sew them onto their respective place. And then you want to duplicate those. And yeah, that part we've done it before. It's pretty easy. It's just time consuming again. It's just a whole lot of clicking, whatever. And then you want to overlap them. Now, when you overlap them, we are going to want to work with layers now. So you're going to want to make these layer number 1 so that they get pushed out. And we don't want to join them up just yet. If we join them up too early, merge them too early, it's going to be very difficult for us to do any troubleshooting. So just make sure you're keeping them separated, and then you're also going to want to freeze the skirt layers, because as you can see, all the weird collisions are going to just pull everything each and every way. So I think freezing the bottom layers is a very good thing. And I actually made layers for the ropes of bends as well, and I put those as layer 1, and the new covers that we made for the ropes of bends, I put those as layer 2. And you can see we got it to a much more stable place here once we froze the underlying skirt pieces. Now you may get certain collisions here and there, and if you get it to a stable place and you have 1 or 2 problems, just fix the problems as they come. So yeah, already you can see we're not even down to like 5 particles distance, which would make it look more realistic, but you can already see how much more in line with our reference this looks compared to before. Of course, this is after years, like hundreds of years of decay, but you can see the kind of things we're replicating here with the fabric wrapping over these kind of rows of vents. So yeah, now we're just going to do a little bit more troubleshooting as I let this relax and take it down to 5 particle distance. We're gonna see some minor collision problems here that I'm trying to fix one by one. Sometimes it helps freezing just the rope of bends underneath and kind of letting the both layers that sandwich it kind of work around it. Sometimes it's just helpful to pull out the piece that is causing trouble. What we're going to try to replicate a lot is the kind of effect you get on the ropes of bends, on the covers of the ropes of bends, where you see that they are kind of, there's a little bit of gathering and the fabric is a little bit stretched. So we're just doing that by taking all of the layers on top of the ropes of bends and just stretching them out a little bit so that they're a little bit wider than what they're getting sewn onto. And this kind of creates that effect that you get in real life as well and makes it look much more realistic in the end. You want to find like any sort of opportunity to get these imperfections done with just the basic kind of the basic functions of clothes. So just with the sewing and with the pattern making of the clothes. And you want to be very, very intentional about this and about making these imperfections, because if you just leave it as is, it'll look much too perfect and much too digital. And I think that's where a lot of CLO3D projects kind of don't take it that next step, and that's in relying too much on the perfection of the program. I think whenever you're trying to create something as realistic as possible, you want to replicate those kind of things you only get in real life, which are just all the random imperfections, and at least you want to create that illusion as much as possible. Now you just see me, because everything is stable and everything looks good, I'm just joining up all of the rope of bends channels together, just like we did with the ropes of bends. And then we're just going to start giving it some puckering on pretty much everything that touches the ropes of bends. So on the skirt pieces and on the ropes of bends channels, we're going to give puckering everywhere. And you want to make sure the puckering is directed towards both sides, especially on the skirt, so that you get the puckering showing in the final render. And you want to find all these little ways to add more realism and more kind of imperfections into your piece within CLO. And I think when you look at the silhouette of the channels now in the render, you can see that it's uneven, and this is because of the pattern drafting we did when we took the channels and we widened them much wider than the place where they're being sewn onto. And this bunches up the fabric and creates this kind of illusion of the, well, not illusion, it creates this unevenness that you would see in the ropes of bends and in the farthingales of the time, which is very, very important to show, in my opinion. I think you want to find any sort of way you can do this in CLO3D, and of course if you want to take it to the next level, you'd have to take it to a program like ZBrush or Substance Painter, just to do some sculpting passes and some texturing passes to really get everything looking as good as possible. But yeah, that was the Farthingale, and that was the 3 versions of the Farthingale, and I hope this was a helpful video. I think the next video I'm gonna make a smock, and we're gonna use this Farthingale in the next video as well, just so you can see how I use the Farthingale in an actual outfit. And why it's useful for the silhouette and for the overall look. So yeah, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys for the next episode.